Disappoint on that matter, but so I just got back from field. Well, not just. I guess in January I got back from 18 months of field work. I'm a PhD student in the Department of Social Anthropology, and so in the summer of 2019, I began field work in Nashville, Tennessee. Nashville is a mid-sized city located in the so-called Bible Belt, which is a region of the southeast U.S. where Evangelical Protestantism kind of permeates the public and private lives of most people. So I spent 18 months at a predominantly white Protestant church whose members are wrestling with their enduring intellectual, social, and spiritual ties to a heritage of fundamentalism, a denomination called the Churches of Christ. So the people there grew up reading the Bible literally, self-isolating in their own social networks of churches, summer camps, and universities, striving to live righteously down to some of the smallest details of religious practice. But now they sort of view themselves as emerging from that kind of life. They've labored for years together as a group to change the way that they read the Bible and the way that they interact with others and imagine their interaction with God. But they're very wary as they're making this change of considering themselves modern Americans because of secularizing tendencies that in their view are rampant in contemporary pluralistic society. So you can go to the next slide. It'll just be a cycle of some photos. If it works, it should do itself automatically.
I could just do it, right? Just go forward.
But there's like it'll go, I think.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll see. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So these are pictures from some interfaith events that I'll be describing a little bit. So I was interested in these people because of this strained position that they now inhabit, sort of teetering between multiple contentious dichotomies that characterize public religion in the U.S. So evangelicalism and liberal Christianity, religious and secular, conservative and progressive, faith and science, evangelistic and pluralistic. So one of the most visible expressions of this in-betweenness that these Christians find themselves in is their interest in getting to know their Muslim peers. So they grew up learning that they could be held personally accountable for the salvation of non-Christians. And so all interactions with such people focused on proselytizing. Now they sort of explicitly denounce proselytizing and what they call transactional relationships. And they organize multi-faith dinners, they go bowling with their Muslim friends, and they host workshops on Islamophobia aimed at educating the rest of the congregation about anti-Muslim prejudice, which is some of the images that you see. So at these events and in all the sort of social occasions that I attended with people, they didn't talk about sort of trying to teach Muslims about Christian scripture. They didn't invite them to church. They didn't talk about needing to save anyone. But in the background of some of these interfaith activities, there remained sort of a deep ambivalence among them about this lingering sense of responsibility that they have to persuade religious others, in this case their Muslim peers, of Christian virtue in some way. So in the anthropology of Christianity, there's a term called the problem of presence, which describes the challenge that Christians across different cultural contexts around the world face in their effort to define and live out their relationship to the divine. And so whether this be through the study of Scripture, through the adoration of icons, praying in tongues, all sorts of different religious practices and ethical dispositions that one finds around the world in Christian communities. So in my field site, something that became of interest to me was that the problem of presence for these Christians has very much to do with how they read the Bible. So they come from a highly rationalistic Protestant tradition that approached the Bible as a storehouse of objective facts that needed to be systematically analyzed. So they labored over this text to determine what God required of them. The more scrupulous their analysis was, the closer they could feel to God. So when it came to interacting with non-Christians, they used to emphasize the exposition of these objective facts and logical arguments supporting them. And this is what it meant to proselytize. Now, though, as they're sort of changing the way that they read, changing the way that they understand how they interact with the Bible, they read it with an attention not to specific facts that need defending, but rather to stories that need telling. So they lean on historical context, they embrace the allegorical aspects of the text, and they seek to understand the moral values that it communicates, values which, for them, give them glimpses of God. So they seek this presence through imaginatively immersing themselves as characters within a living story that they then act out in their relations with others. Over the course of my fieldwork, I came to see that these Christians' changing interactional approach to religious otherness, or to the religious otherness of Muslims, mirrored changes in their approach to a different kind of religious otherness that was more familiar to them, namely the otherness of God and their efforts to experience divine presence. So in my dissertation, one of the things that I explore is this shift away from discursive modes of proselytization and toward this more socially diffuse demonstration of Christian virtue that emphasizes the creation of these kinds of positive moments with their Muslim peers, and how this reflects a shift amongst themselves regarding their conception of their relationship to God. So I think, sort of in conclusion, this is just kind of an example of the extent to which interfaith or interreligious engagement is also very much about the intrafaith aspects of living in a religiously diverse society.